Well, hello and welcome to this video where we will be building and then later styling a small website for a skateboard shop, beginning with some starter files here in a folder on my desktop called DWA2 boards. And let's take a look inside just to see what our starting point looks like. We have two subfolders, one called assets, one called images. Let's take a peek inside each. This is the assets folder. It contains 4 text files, which will be helping to eliminate some typing. They contain some content that we'll copy and paste on pages we will later create in Dreamweaver. The other folder, images, has a couple of background images and a couple of product type images for our skateboard related site, and we'll be bringing these two guys onto our products page, and these will be later used as background images when we get to the CSS formatting portion of our video. So to begin, we'll jump right into Dreamweaver. We're using the 2017 release of Dreamweaver for this video, and step one, as you might hopefully guess, would be to define our site. We want to give a site name. In this case, we'll just call it boards, but it's pretty open to whatever you might want to call it. And then our folder will be pointed directly to that DWA2 boards folder that we were looking at earlier on my desktop. You want to select that folder. Double check it before you save your definition to make sure that the correct folder has been placed there by Dreamweaver. And then one other setting we will follow up with is the local info in the advanced settings category, and we will browse to that images folder. Since we already have that set up to contain our images, we'll allow Dreamweaver to manage that better for us by identifying it for it. Now we have our files panel reacting with the site name here, and also the path to our root folder, which we just set up, as well as the 2 subfolders that we saw earlier. And we are ready now to start building our first page. We are going to build a page that we can use for the other 2 pages. This is just a tiny 3-page little website demo. But we still don't want to bother with creating each page from scratch. So my first page, when I create it by going File, New, will be to kind of create a template that the other 2 can borrow some code from. We're going to start off here with an HTML document type. We are going to not use any kind of bootstrap framework as we might otherwise, and create the page from there. So here's our seemingly empty page. It's showing up for me in split view in the standard workspace. You would want to see if you can set things up that same way. And by default, it would normally be in live view, but when I'm building completely from scratch, I think I'm going to benefit more from the design view for a couple of reasons, and we'll see those later. I also want the properties panel down at the bottom. So I'm going to go Window, Properties. It may or may not dock for you like it just did for me. It may just float initially for you, and if so, you want to kind of drag it down towards the bottom below where our code's showing up, and you want to kind of rest it down there really towards the very bottom until you see that blue line indicating that it is ready for docking, and it'll snap into place if you let go of your mouse at that point. So now we kind of have the setup we want. We've got split view with design on top, code on bottom. We've got our properties panel below that. We've got our files panel here all set up, and we're ready to start creating some content in our first page. Currently that first page is untitled. I'm going to go ahead and save it now, although you could wait till sometime later. It's generally a good idea to do so early on. And this is going to be our home page eventually, although I am going to use it as a template for the other 2 pages. I'll go ahead and call it index.html. That is our typical home page name. Servers like to have that home page named thusly. I'm going to save it and just double check that that's showing up in your files panel, which would be verifying that things are set up properly in your site. If you get any kind of tool tips like that popping up, you just want to get rid of them for now. When you're working with a new installation of Dreamweaver, that'll happen. All right, now I'm going to be building this site with some semantic naming conventions in mind. As we have seen in our textbook, things like nav and header and footer are good to use to kind of self-describe those portions of your document. All right, so we click into our main design area and we're going to start creating some content here. I'm going to hit enter, and you can see that Dreamweaver creates kind of a couple of dummy paragraphs there. I'm going to click into that first one in code view because it's easier to see there. Click on the paragraph itself. As you can see, I'm going to insert my header, not a heading, but a header. Header is like a banner area toward the top of the page, and we do want a paragraph inside of it. So I'm going to wrap this header around my selected paragraph and OK that. I don't need to give it a class name or ID name. It's the only header we will have, so we're good there. And then click inside that guy, and this is where I'm going to type the company's name, Complete Skateboards, and later we will format that paragraph inside that header. For now, I'm just going to click down below that, and I should be in my second paragraph, which you can see here in the code view. I'm ready to create the navigation area, and again, I'm going to have that paragraph inside the nav, so I will now create another paragraph below there. I want to keep these paragraphs just so I can keep things straight as I create these individual items. All right, so I'm going to click into that second paragraph there. I'm going to click on it in the tag selector, make sure I have selected the second paragraph, P tags for paragraphs, and then I'm going to do another insert, this time for navigation or nav, and we will wrap around the selected paragraph. Okay. And then I'm going to type the name of my 3 pages. The first one is a home page, just a space there. Boards will be the second page, without an E. And then lastly, contact. Now don't worry about the spacing or whatever. These will eventually be links that will be formatted with CSS. But we're just getting some of this content out there so that when we create multiple pages, they'll all have the same navigation bar. So I don't want to duplicate any of my work here. I'm going to click down below that, and this is going to be my main text area now that is going to be on every page, and every page is going to need a page heading. So I'm just going to type in this last paragraph that we have currently. I'm going to type page heading, and we can fill that in with the correct heading on each of our pages. I'm going to hit enter for the next paragraph, and then I'm going to come back up to that page heading since it is a heading and not just a normal paragraph. You want to come down to the properties panel once you're inside that heading with your cursor. Make sure you're on the HTML, not the CSS portion of the properties panel, and then you want to click into format. This is going to be a heading 1, so it's a prominent heading on the page. And you can see the resulting default formatting there. So that's an H1 or a heading 1. Next, we would be filling in some basic paragraph text. I'm just going to fill that in with a blah, 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 which we'll later fill in on each page with the relevant information. And just to get an idea of what other text might look like on the page, I'm going to type subheading, hit enter, and some more blah, 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 just to take up some page space, make it look a little more realistic. And I'll take that subheading now, and I will switch that to an H2, a heading 2 level, which should be smaller, as we see there. Clicking down below the last blah, 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 which is our last paragraph we have there. And now we're ready for the footer. And I'm going to insert that. I'm going to click on that paragraph in the tag selector, and then I'm going to insert a footer. That's where typically copyright type information will go. I will go ahead and wrap around the selection there. And then inside, we'll come up with a copyright text. Typical copyright Complete Skateboards is the name of the company. Comma. All rights reserved. A typical comment there, and then a less than typical one, since this is just a fun site. All rights reserved and all wrongs avenged. I've got too many L's in all. So just some typical copyright text there. And we have now in review, we have a banner area, which is a header. We have a nav area for our links. We have a page heading. We have some main content area. And again, we'll be dumping some of the asset text into these areas on each page. And then we have some copyright text in the footer area. So those are our main areas. The last thing I want to do here is kind of take this section of main content, because it's the only area that really doesn't have its own container like all of these others do. So I'm going to select all of those. Make sure you're below the nav and above the footer. Get everything selected there in design view, and then we're going to insert a div. And again, we will be wrapping around the selection. And this time, I'd like to give this a class name. Actually, an ID name. You use IDs when there's only going to be one of them on a page. Classes for multiple things on a page. And we'll just call this main. And there you can see the visual container. And down on the tag selector, just above the main property inspector and below the code area, you can see hashtag main or pound main, meaning it's an ID given that name. So you can kind of name these elements. If they don't already have a name, like a footer, header, navigation, which are kind of self-explanatory, you can kind of help by surrounding some stuff with a div and giving it an ID or a class. All right, so we've got basically the fundamental structure for all of our pages. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we save that. If we already know what we're going to call those other pages, maybe we should go a little step further here in the navigation area and go ahead and create links to them, even though they don't currently exist. So let me show you how to create a link. This is going to be our navigation on all three pages. We want to do this once and only once, so I'm going to select or double click home, and then I'm going to go to the HTML part of the property inspector there. I'm going to go into the link area. This is where we would give the actual address of the destination for that link. So when in the browser it's clicked, the browser knows where to go to bring up the next page. So we already know that that's index.html because that's the same page we've already created and we're currently on. But when we're on those other pages, it'll need to go there. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You could just type it in, but you got to be really careful or you create a broken link accidentally, so by misspelling it. So we're going to go browse to file, which is one of the little tools next to that, and find the page that we want to link to. Again, it happens to be the same page we're on, which is unusual. The next one is boards, and now for this one down in the link area, I of course can't browse for it because it doesn't exist yet, so I'm going to anticipate its name being boards.html. Carefully type that out, hit enter. Go to the next one, contact. Likewise, go into the link area and just type contact.html. I want to be careful that you didn't misspell those. Alright, so you can see the appearance in design view kind of shows that those are in fact links. And one more time, you can see they're both there, identical in content. And you can see them also, well, it's not showing up at the moment, but if I refresh, it does. And lastly, save as for contact.html, save, and well, you can see all three of them here. And again, if we refresh, yours may or may not need refreshing, but my files panel is lagging a bit here. So there it is, boards, contact, and index. All right, one of the next things that we need to do is preview these three pages in the browser and check that those navigation links work correctly. But the problem is these pages aren't able to identify themselves because we don't have a page title that's custom to each, so we need to do that next. So this is going to be our index.html is our home page, so page heading should now be rewritten with home or maybe welcome, as is sometimes done instead of saying home. And then on boards, page heading would be replaced with boards. I'm just putting an exclamation on there for fun. And then contact. You don't normally put exclamation points on your page titles, but we're doing that here. Again, this is a skateboard shop, so we're not too concerned about conventions as much as we might if it were, let's say, a bank site. We're going to do a save all, so that saves us from having to do each one separately. And yes, I do want to, I don't know why I actually got that, but there we go. All three of these should be saved properly now. And now if we go to the browser, we should be able to identify this is our contact page, for example. This is our boards page, and this is our home page. So we should be able to confirm that our navigation bar is working. All right, with that completed, the next thing that we want to do is start putting in some of the content for our pages. So let's start with our home page. We're going to replace this blah 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 stuff with the actual text from the assets. So we're going to go into our assets area, and we've got contact info, we've got product information, we've got home page info. So that's the one we want. I'm going to double click on that. It's going to bring up a new window here with just the text for our home page. I'm going to select through all that, or you can just do Control A to select it. I'll do Control C to copy it. Come back to our home page. I've already selected the stuff I want to replace. You can Control V or paste it in that way. And here we can see that text. Now the text comes in, and you can examine that in code view as separate paragraphs. You can kind of see the P tags in there if you look at it more closely in your code. It's not uncommon that you will be given content for a page, maybe in an email or a separate text file or a Word file or something where you'll need to copy and paste out of. And when you do that, you always want to be careful when you paste it into your page in Dreamweaver to check to see how that ends up being structured by Dreamweaver when it was pasted. It's not always what you want, but here we can deal with that. Those are all paragraphs. I'm going to turn these into headings now, the ones with the question marks. There are three of them, so I'm going to turn those into H2s because they're not as prominent as page heading H1s, but they're subheadings of equal stature on the page. So I'm going to click on the first one, use that HTML section here in the paragraph area, make it an H2. It's going to be clearly smaller than the H1, but also clearly much bigger than the paragraph text, so it stands out appropriately. Let's do the third one. Scroll down, and you can see that we have now a much more prominent looking main area of our page, the content area. All right, great. Let's save that. Move on to We're going to skip over the boards because that's the most complicated one, and we're going to go to the contact page, which is the easiest one. Again, I'm going to select the area carefully that I want to replace, the blah blahs and subheadings. I'm going to open the contact info text. You can see how simple and straightforward that content area is. Again, we will select it and we will copy and paste that into our contact page and replace the other stuff at the same time. There we go. I'm going to make customer service and skateboard questions and need a job as a H2. So same process as in the previous page. Pretty much a mechanical process now once you get used to what you're doing. There we go. Quick and easy. Lastly, and we can save that out now or wait till later and save all. Here's the boards page. Again, I want to replace the blah 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 stuff with the content for the boards. That said, we have a little bit more complicated structure here when we're bringing in the product information for the two skateboards. So first of all, let's open up the description for product 1 and let's copy and paste that in. Quite a bit more text than in the previous pages. So I'm going to replace this text with it, paste that in. I'm going to hit enter below that as I have a second product to bring in as well. So we're going to open up description product 2 and do the same thing with it. Select. I'm deliberately not selecting that empty first line there. If you didn't catch that, you could always clean it up afterwards by deleting it here in Dreamweaver in the design view. So edit paste on the second product information. It's structured similarly. And be sure you're clear on where one product description ends and the next one begins. And that's with the word globe in each case. So now the next thing we're going to do is add an image. Remember, we have those two skateboard images for these. So we're going to bring those in. Our insertion point for the image is going to be just to the left of the word globe, which is the company behind the skateboard, I believe. And we will go into our images folder here. And notice we have board1.gif and board2.gif, and those are the two board images that we're going to bring in. So with the cursor right next to the G in globe on our first board, we'll go insert, image, and then it is board 1. It's the colorful one of the two, and we'll make that okay that and bring that in. Now you can see that it looks a little strange because it's pretty long vertically and it sits just next to that initial line that we had the cursor next to. That's default HTML formatting for an image inside of a paragraph. We're going to fix that later in CSS. We're going to leave it like that for now. We're going to put our cursor in the same analogous spot to the left of the word globe in our second product, and we'll do the same thing from there. You can also, by the way, drag and drop an image directly onto the design view area there, but I'm not sure that's going to be easier because you can easily drop it in the wrong place and create a problem. So I'd rather put the cursor carefully where I want it and then select it in this manner. All right, so there are my two images. You can see the same kind of strange formatting of the lines that occur there. It doesn't look very nice in terms of the way the text is not wrapping around those skateboards images, but we'll fix that later, as I mentioned. One thing we do want to do is click on the image and add what I would call alternative text. So we're going to just put select the image, go to the Properties area, and go to the Alt portion of the Property Inspector, and we'll just type a description of the board. So I'll just say Globe Bantam skateboard photo. Now, alternative text is good to have because you don't need the enter key in there actually, just click away from it. It's good to have in the browser for users that might not be able to see the board in all of its glory. The second one here, we click on and do the same analogous thing. This one will be a globe pintail skateboard photo. You can get as detailed or general as you like on those, but it's always good to have some alternative text on any image like that. Alrighty, and that pretty much completes the content for these pages. We can now close all of these text files out because we don't need them. We've copied and pasted what we needed. So we're going to go ahead and save all. Okay, so now that we have all of our content in place and we're about done, we just need to double check in the browser, and we're on the boards page, so that'll show up first. And we just want to make sure that all the content's there as expected and our page titles are as expected. This is the boards page because that was the one open in Dreamweaver, and although it doesn't look awesome formatting wise, it's what we expect at this point. Here's the home page with all the headings and paragraphs in place, the contact page similarly structured. So everything looks good as expected. Of course, we're going to make it look a whole lot better when we get to the second part of this video where we start working with CSS to format all these pages. And that's it for this part of the video. Thank you.